Good morning and welcome to Meet Your Future. My name is Liz and I am part of the Education Work and Skills team at the Greater Manchester Combined Authority. I'm also joined by Laura, who's behind the scenes as my co-host. For those of you that joined us before, you might be aware that Meet Your Future was launched by Andy Burnham in 2019 to engage young people like you to connect with different businesses and employers to explore lots of different roles and careers. This week is National Careers Week and our theme for the week is careers in the public sector. Did you know that the public sector employs 5.7 million people across the country, from hospitals to transport, national government to local government? It's an industry that keeps on moving. Have you ever thought about a career with the NHS, for example, or working in politics? These could be careers within the public sector, and Meet Your Future live sessions this week will introduce you to jobs and careers you will have heard of, and lots of jobs and careers that will be new to you. Could these be one of your future careers? In this session today, you will hear from District Judge Guirguis and Tracey Etienne, MBE, who is a Senior Legal Advisor with HM Courts and Tribunal Service. The session will inform you, inspire you, and highlight why you might be hopeful and optimistic about your future career in Greater Manchester. Please make sure you use the question box for any questions or thoughts you might have throughout the session. You'll see us on the right-hand side of your screen, and my co-host will publish any questions that come through. Please ask your teacher to put any questions in the box. Please don't be shy. There is no such thing as a stupid question. So anything you want to find out, please ask. If you want to use the captions or subtitles during the event, please select the captions, subtitles on in your video controls. I will now hand over to District Judge Guirguis. Over to you. Thank you, Sharon.
Good morning to everyone. My name is Guirguis and I'm a District Judge. I, together with Tracey Etienne, will be talking to you about the different legal careers that you might want to consider. I'm going to start with the different types of jobs. Before I was a judge, I was a barrister. A barrister is a type of lawyer. Barristers provide legal advice and represent parties in any legal proceedings, whether that's in a courtroom, and you will see conveniently I'm in a courtroom in Liverpool, or in a tribunal, or in a negotiation. Another type of legal role is that of being a solicitor. Solicitors are people who provide legal advice and represent parties in any legal proceedings. You may think that sounds an awful lot like being a barrister, but the difference tends to be that solicitors are the lawyers that people see first, and if they need more specialist advice or more specialist advocacy, which is speaking up for someone, usually in a courtroom setting, then they will go to a barrister. Tracey will tell you a bit more about being a solicitor. In order to be a barrister, you do need a degree. It doesn't have to be a degree in law, and I would encourage people to pursue a subject they enjoy. I can tell you that the designated family judge for the Northern Circuit, and that's a High Court judge, and I'll explain about High Court judges in a moment, Mr. Justice MacDonald, actually has a degree in archaeology. If you do a non-law degree, however, you must complete a law conversion course known as the Graduate Diploma in Law, or the GDL. Once you've graduated, either in law or with the GDL, then you have to complete the Bar Professional Training course. This is the course where you learn the skills of being a barrister, such as advocacy and opinion writing and drafting. It helps you to convert your legal knowledge into practical skills that you can apply in the workplace. There is a way of completing the Bar Professional Training course in two parts, which can help with funding, effectively splitting the course in two, so you will pay for the first half and then do the later half at a different time. I've had a little look online. I found that there is actually a University of Northumbria, which combines the academic course, the degree course, with the vocational course. Once you've completed the academic qualifications and the vocational qualifications, you then have to have a year as what's called a pupil barrister. You learn the skills of being a barrister from your pupil supervisor. For the first 6 months, you follow your pupil supervisor, completing their work and watching and learning them from the way that they do their work. I have to tell you, when I was a pupil, I took following them a little too seriously and nearly followed my pupil supervisor into the men's loos. It really is a great way to learn about being a barrister, and because it is entirely different, having a client in front of you, experiencing genuine, strong emotions, having to guide them through a difficult situation. It's very difficult, different dealing with them in person as to reading about it on papers. After 6 months, the first 6 months of pupillage, then you are let loose on the public, but that's on the basis that you're supervised by your pupil supervisor. What that really means is you have your own work, but you still have the guidance and support from your pupil supervisor. You are on your own at court. Once you've completed pupillage, then you are a qualified barrister. Barristers can work in the employed sector, for example, working in industry, advising companies on different contracts, or working for the Crown Prosecution Service, prosecuting criminals. The majority of barristers, however, and I was this, are self-employed. Whilst they are self-employed, barristers collect together in something called chambers. When I was a barrister, I was a member of Exchange Chambers in Liverpool. Exchange Chambers has offices in Liverpool, Manchester and Leeds, with a whole range of barristers with all different practice areas: crime, commercial, personal injury, etc. You can have lots of smaller sets of chambers as well, and they're all across the country. As a barrister, you do become a member of one of the inns in court, and they're based in London. There are 4 inns of court: Lincoln's Inn, Gray's Inn, Middle Temple and Inner Temple. I'm a member of Inner Temple. The inns provide the library facilities, dining facilities and professional accommodation. Most importantly, and this is something to really think about, the inns offer different scholarships to help out with costs of studies, and it's well worth going online to look at the different inns to see what they can help out with. If you ever do get a chance to go to London, it is well worth looking around the inns, just as a tourist thing to do. It's a little bit like walking into Hogwarts sometimes, but it is a sort of quiet oasis in a very busy city, and it's actually situated opposite the Court of Appeal in London. If you see on the news people coming out of the court in grand doors and doing the press conference, that's the Court of Appeal in London, which actually is a spectacular building to visit if you have the opportunity to do so. So that's telling you a bit about how to get the job, but what's the job of barrister like? Well, it can be an absolute roller coaster ride. There's something called the cab rank rule, which means that if you're suitably qualified to represent a client, then you must do so, even if you don't like their case, and you must represent them to the best of your abilities. When I was a baby barrister, and I still did criminal work, I was asked to defend an alleged burglar. It wasn't that long after I'd been burgled myself, and I really, really wasn't keen to do the case. I was even less keen to do the case when I saw the papers, and I saw the reason why my client was being prosecuted was that his handprint was found on the drain pipe next to the window, which was the point of entry for the burglar to get into the house. My client even had previous convictions for burglary, so I was utterly convinced he'd done it. And I really, really hated doing cases where I didn't think I was going to win, which is the vanity side of me. Anyway, my client's story was that he'd been running through gardens and he'd simply rested his hand on this drain pipe to catch his breath. I can't remember the reason why he'd been saying he'd been running through gardens, but thankfully no one ever asked. As I say, it looked pretty obvious to me that the handprint was there because he was the person that climbed in. However, in a criminal court, in order for a person to be convicted of a crime, the jury has to decide whether the person has done it, and they have to be sure beyond reasonable doubt. So if they've got any doubt that they've done it, then they must find them not guilty and acquit them and let them go. I had to cross-examine the police officer, who was the forensic officer who'd carried out the inspection of the property and taken the handprint from the drain pipe. And I asked the question whether it's possible that the handprint could have been left as a result of simply resting a hand on the drain pipe. And the officer answered yes. After all the evidence had been heard, both the prosecutor and I had given our closing speeches, and the judge had given his summing up. The jury then retired to consider their verdicts. After 10 minutes of deliberation, the jury acquitted my client. You don't get an explanation from a jury as to why they have found him not guilty, but it must have been because there was an alternative account, so they couldn't be sure of his guilt. I couldn't believe it, and neither could the prosecutor. In my barrister job, I did mainly family work. I would represent parents who couldn't agree on arrangements for children, in particular how much time they would spend with each parent. I would also argue about how people who were in the process of divorce should divide up their assets and money when they got divorced. And that's for a number of reasons. Firstly, if parties are able to agree something, it's much better for them psychologically, because they are getting something that they wanted, albeit with some degree of compromise, which it makes it more likely that an arrangement or setup will work. Also, legal proceedings are expensive, and it costs less if you're able to reach an agreement. I'm hoping that by telling you this, you can see that sometimes it's not always about arguing. Sometimes it's about trying to work out a solution when the people directly involved can't find a solution themselves. I have to say, some of my happiest days at court are where you have been able to find a solution and a way forward when you never ever thought it was going to be possible. After about 20 years working as a barrister, I have become a judge. I've explained I'm a district judge. The hierarchy of judiciary begin with the magistrates, who are not legally qualified, but are appointed to make decisions in criminal and family cases, and I think some very limited civil matters. They will sit as a panel of 2 or 3 magistrates together with a legal advisor. The legal advisor tells them about the law that they have to apply, and they must make a decision about that, and the magistrates must make the decision about the facts, applying the law to the decision they make. Tracey has been a legal advisor, and I think she'll be telling you a little bit about that. The next one up to magistrates is district judge, which is what I am. I'm actually a family district judge. I'm allocated to do solely family cases. I'm deciding cases that I used to argue about as a barrister. In addition, I'm also dealing with what's called public law children cases. And that's cases where local authority steps in because parents aren't able to meet the needs of children, and there appears to be actual harm being suffered by children or a risk of significant harm to children, and that's where a local authority has to step in and sometimes have to bring it to court. There are also civil district judges who decide cases about things like contracts, personal injury, and arguments about people's estate on death. Any sort of civil dispute a district judge can deal with, subject to financial limits. The next level up is circuit judge, then High Court judge, then Court of Appeal judge, and then you get the Supreme Court. Now, interestingly, this is, I think, the first week that the Supreme Court is currently sitting in Manchester this week. It is open to the public. I'm not sure what the arrangements are to be able to watch cases, but if you have the opportunity to go to the Manchester Civil and Family Justice Centre, the Supreme Court are sitting there. As you go up the tiers of judiciary, the cases get more and more serious, and particularly I've mentioned the Supreme Court. If you're in the Supreme Court, generally speaking, it's what's described as a case of public importance. That is actually one of the most interesting features of the legal profession, in that the courts can also hold the government to account. You may not recall, but in the process of this country leaving the European Union, there was a case brought by somebody called Gina Miller who challenged the government's action in failing to get a vote in Parliament for the Brexit bill, and she won at the Supreme Court. It was obviously a case of general public importance because it was a constitutional issue that the court had to decide upon. And it really does demonstrate how important the rule of law is and the importance of the independence of the judiciary that implements the law. So that's a really brief snapshot of the job of barristers and judges. How did I get here? I went to a Catholic comprehensive school in Mansfield, which is in North Nottinghamshire. Until I was 16 years old, I was going to be a stockbroker. I was really interested in the financial markets, loved the idea of watching currency fluctuations and watching share prices. And I suspect a lot of you are yawning as I say that. However, I didn't do so well in my maths GCSE. And as my plan had been to do maths A level, I took A-level law as a backup plan. When I was doing my A-level law classes, my teacher took us to Nottingham Crown Court to see law in action. We were sat in the gallery watching barristers and judges wandering around doing lots of very important looking things. And I thought, hang on a second, this is what I want to do. And I completely changed course and decided I wanted to be a barrister. I went on to do my A-levels and got the grades in maths, chemistry and law A-levels to be able to study law at Birmingham University. After I completed my law degree in Birmingham, I went on what was then called the Bar Vocational course, which at that stage could only be studied in London. So I spent a year in London. I have to be clear, in terms of the vocational course now, it is available countrywide, so you do not have to go to London in order to study it. In particular, I know that the course is operated in Manchester as well. After I completed my bar vocational course, or rather during completing my bar vocational course, I applied for pupillage. This is the bit I need to warn you about. It is incredibly competitive and difficult to get pupillage. There are a few jobs available. When I applied, I made over 100 applications before I was successful. They have now changed the system for applying, and there is now a centralised system. So the majority of chambers operate something like the university allocation system called the Pupillage Gateway, where you complete one form and list your preferred choice of chambers. But it's not unusual for people not to get pupillage the first round of applications, and it may be the second or third round of applications. Anyway, I started off my barrister career at Whitefriars Chambers in Chester. At the start of my pupillage, one of the members of my chambers was about to start a really important trial, prosecuting a man for sexually abusing children in North Wales children's homes. He broke his arm coming home from New Year's Eve celebrations. That was literally my lucky break, as I was needed to take notes of evidence for him because he was unable to do so as a result of his injury. It meant that I watched two of the best barristers in the Northwest at that time, Lord Alex Carlisle, who I'm not sure is still, he was working as a terrorism advisor to the government at one time, and somebody called Robert Fordham were the barristers involved. They really were two barristers at the absolute top of their game, and you could actually see the two of them holding the jury in the palms of their hands and just absolute sheer skill. What was really fascinating about that particular trial was the range of witnesses. All of the complainants were adults who'd been sexually abused as children in the children's homes. The strength they'd shown in coming to terms with what happened to them and facing the man that had abused them was absolutely astonishing. The defendant was convicted after a trial. There were lots of counts on the indictment. That's the list of charges that he had to face. So the jury was out for 2.5 days deliberating. It is remarkable how stressful it is waiting for a jury to come back, particularly a trial of that magnitude. After the defendant was convicted and sentenced, one of the complainants came over to speak to the prosecuting barrister to say thank you. And you could see from the way he was speaking that he was clearly relieved he'd been believed and relieved someone had stuck up for him, however late it was after the event. Again, you can see, excuse me, just how important the public service that barristers do provide, and obviously the court provide as well. After 6 months of the first 6 months of my pupillage, I was let loose on the public. My first case was before a judge who did have a bit of a reputation for being a bit tough with barristers. However, my pupil supervisor had spoken to the judge before my first trial and mentioned it was my first trial. At the end of the case, after we'd actually managed to reach an agreement, she gave me lots of words of encouragement. My opponent hadn't realised it was my first case as well, and so he took me out for lunch afterwards. That is one of the beautiful features of the bar, that there is a lot of mutual support. However much you will be scrapping as much as possible in the courtroom, afterwards there's always time for a bit of a chat and an occasional giggle as well. It really does make what can be an incredibly stressful working environment much easier, and there is remarkable kindness amongst the bar. As time went on, my practice developed into more family sphere. It was just where I tended to get more and more work. After 10 years, I moved chambers to Exchange Chambers in Liverpool, and I moved on to doing more financial remedy work. I absolutely love that. I've represented multimillionaire businessmen, footballers, wife of a member of a pop group, and courageous people who've taken on abusers. The people you meet are truly fascinating, and you learn something every day, not just about law, but about people as well, and it's absolutely fascinating. I would love to share the revenge stories I've heard over the years, but I think it probably would be inappropriate, and I'm saving them for my book I'm going to write when I retire. I then applied to be a judge. To be a judge, you have to have worked in law for a specified period of time, depending on which job. You work as a part-time judge before a full-time judge. It gives you a chance to try it out to see whether you like it. I became a part-time judge in March 2019. I started with civil work, which wasn't something I'd done particularly as a barrister, which can be a bit scary, but you learn along the way, and I loved doing something new. And then applied to be a full-time judge. I was really lucky that I got the job first time, and to be working in Liverpool is absolutely fantastic. I really do genuinely love my job. My work colleagues are absolutely brilliant, and the work is fascinating. If you are thinking about a job in law, think about building up your CV. I used to be on the recruitment panel in our chambers, in Exchange Chambers. There will be lots of people applying with amazing academic records, so we tended to be drawn to interesting people who had done a bit outside law. Community work type things are always interesting and often show strengths that can be applied at the bar. For example, if you've been a guide leader, you will have been used to organising and managing people, which is an amazing skill. If you've worked in a shop, you may have had to deal with a difficult customer, which you will frequently do being a barrister. If you've had caring responsibilities and managed schoolwork, it will show you how you can manage a heavy workload. You might have helped a relative with a difficult problem that might show you can advocate for a vulnerable person. All of these are amazing skills, so think about those things and building those up. If there's anything like debating club or school council available to you, join it. It's a great way to build up your experience of public speaking and demonstrate that you can put forward a case. There's an organisation called Young Citizens that runs a mock trial competition. Mock trials are a truly great way to develop skills and demonstrate a willingness to learn. You're also likely to get access to people in the legal profession from that. Build up your work experience if you can. A great way to do that is just go and sit in the Crown Court in the public gallery. There may be age restrictions depending on the type of trial there is, so it might be an idea to contact the court beforehand. You might be able to get work experience in barristers' chambers or solicitors' offices, although it tends to be for people who are over 16. If you go on the Bar Council website, there is something called the Bar Placement Scheme, which allowed students to spend up to 4 days shadowing a barrister. Have a look on that website as applications are open this month. So particularly if you're a sixth former, that will be a good opportunity for you. Whatever you do, don't think I wouldn't fit in. I hope you can see that I'm a mixed race woman with a bit of a northern accent, with a bit of a Birmingham twang. We're not all crusty old blokes. And it's never too early to think about being a judge. Judges are getting younger. I'm probably one of the older ones at nearly 50. So have a think about that. But what I really want to tell you is law is great. It's dead interesting. You meet great people, you hear shocking stories and sort out what is completely insolvable. Whatever you do, I wish you all your very best for your futures. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Sharon, for that overview of your career and working as a barrister on to becoming a judge. I'm going to hand over to Tracey from the HM Courts and Tribunal Service, and she'll tell us some more.
Hello, I'm Tracey Etienne from HMCTS, which is Her Majesty's Court and Tribunal Service, or His Majesty's Court and Tribunal Service. I'm going to talk to you about a different route into law, probably my route into law. I think I need to write my book as well, because I think I've got quite a good book as well, so I'll have competition with the judge about this book. Well, my route into law isn't the traditional route into law. I'll start off with my background. My parents came over in the 50s, part of the Windrush generation. They came over from the Caribbean. My father came over to join the RAF, and my mother came over just to work, and she worked as a cleaner, and they met in London. And of course, early on, my father travelled and then settled in North Wales. And again, because my parents came from the Caribbean, they were very much into, you know, we've come over to the UK to make our lives better. So myself, my sister, we were growing up, we were instilled with the skills of, you've only got one chance in life, just grab it. Education is the key for you to get on with your life. So went to, again, I mentioned before, North Wales, not many black families in North Wales. I think I was the only black person in the whole school. My sister was well known in the area because she was very good at athletics. So I was always known, my sister was older than me, so I was always known as Bridget's little sister who was good at athletics. So because my sister was good at athletics, I thought I need to be good at something. So I decided to study as much as I could. But unfortunately, when I came to do my GCSEs, I didn't really, I didn't reach my full potential, and I didn't get good grades in my GCSEs. So my parents were disappointed by my GCSE results, so I decided to stay on in sixth form. But I was sort of 17 and thinking to myself, well, I was 17 and I realised I wasn't happy studying anymore. I wanted to get a job. I didn't want to do my A-levels. I couldn't say what I wanted to do in university. If I went to university, I wasn't sure about what subject I was going to study, what I wanted to do. So I decided to get a job. So I shocked my parents at the time, were shocked. I decided that I wanted to not go to university, is to basically get a job. So I happened to apply and was very successful getting a job with a bank, with TSB Bank at the time, as a school leaver. And I started off as cashier. And I loved the job because I realised I like dealing with people. I like talking. I like to hear about people used to come in, chat to me at the counter. I used to find all sorts of gossip, and I loved the job. And I picked up the skills that I could. People liked me. I was a good communicator. I was interested in them, and I was very fortunate to be promoted. And I did some qualifications with the bank. And by the age of 22, I became a bank manager. So I was really lucky. I was one of the youngest bank managers in the country at 22. So that was my aim at the time, to be a bank manager. So at 22, I became a bank manager, and I thought to myself, I've reached my potential. I'm 22. I'm a bank manager. What's next? So I thought to myself, I could either stay in banking and be a bank manager for the next 40 years. And I thought, well, 40 years I'm doing this job, I think it'd be pretty boring. I want to change my career. So and I think at the time, I think it probably at the time my father passed away. So I think it was linked to my father passing away. I thought, right, life's too short. I need to grab life. So I decided that I wanted to change my career, but for me to move on with my career, I realised I needed a degree. I didn't have a degree because I didn't have any A levels. Because by then, being 22, I was a mature student. So my local college was linked to Salford University, and they were running a degree courses. So I thought I'd go to my local college, do a degree course, a business course, because I of course had the business background. So I did a business management course in Wrexham, and that was linked to Salford University. So I did my business degree, and in my final year I was looking for jobs, deciding what to do. I still didn't know what to do, but my best friend at the time was a solicitor. So she suggested that I do some work experience in the solicitor's office. I did some work experience in the solicitor's office, and I loved the job. I thought, this is for me, dealing with people, helping them, similar to what I did in banking. You're listening to people, you're trying to resolve the difficulties, you're trying to help them. Plus, you go into court and you're talking again in court, and again, and you've got an audience, and I like an audience. So I decided that law was for me. But I realised then I had a business degree, I didn't have a law degree. So I thought, what am I going to do? So I went to my local careers advisor. And I remember saying to my career advisor, I think I want to be a barrister, because not a solicitor. I like being a barrister because that meant I could go to court every day and represent people. So I remember saying to my local, to my career advisor, I want to be a barrister. And my career advisor turned around and said to me, people like you do not become barristers. And I said, what do you mean by that? And I realised what she meant, because I was black, because I was female, and because I didn't have a degree. I didn't have a degree from Oxford and Cambridge or from one of the good universities. She said, you won't be a barrister. If I was you, become an accountant, or become, you've got a business degree, use that. I remember going home and saying to my parents, I think I want to be a barrister, but then my career advisors advised me to be an accountant, because people like me, who are ordinary from the, won't be a barrister. My mum turned around and said to me, Tracey, if you want to be a barrister, it's going to be hard, but it means that, you just knuckle down. If you've got that ambition, go for it. You've got nothing to lose. Life's too short. Just go for it. So I thought, right, I've got that drive, determination. I'm going to be a barrister. So at the time, I had to do a conversion course because I didn't have a law degree. And at the time, there was a law college in Chester that did a conversion course. So I decided, managed to get in, got myself in, there was a fee involved. So I managed to get myself a student loan. And I did the conversion course. That conversion course, for people who's got a non-legal degree, have to do a conversion course so that you've got, you come out with the same legal degree as somebody who's got done a law degree. So I did my conversion course. And then I decided, as I mentioned before, I wanted to be a barrister. So at the time, the bar vocational course was being run in Manchester. So I did my bar vocational course in Manchester. As mentioned before by the judge, you then have to apply for pupillage. So I did apply for various pupillages, and I was offered a pupillage in London, but I was also offered an employed pupillage in a commercial one, because when I was a student, I managed to get a student job in a food company called Iceland. Iceland's based locally in North Wales, and the head office is based there. And I got a job in their legal department just as a student. And when I was applying for pupillages, they mentioned to me that they could offer me a pupillage there, because they have barristers that work for them, that represent them in court for employment tribunals or for contracts. So I managed to get and I was very fortunate to get an employed pupillage with Iceland. I managed to work for them for a number of years, looking at employment tribunals. Employment tribunal cases are when, somebody that works for Iceland decides to, feel as if they've been unfairly sacked or unfairly treated, they will go to a tribunal, and I would represent the company at an employment tribunal, and I would represent them in court to defend that claim. Or my job was also to consider claims, whether to pay those claims. there may be certain claims coming from individuals which, yeah, they have been unfairly treated. I'd also decide whether to actually give them a supplement for that treatment. After a number of years working for Iceland, the job itself was more office based because I was looking at contracts. I was doing a few hearings, but generally a lot of the hearings we were actually employing other people to go to court. So I missed the court side of the job. I wasn't going to court as often as I wanted to. So I decided I wanted to change my career. And I remember seeing in a local paper there was a job as a legal advisor, training legal advisor, working for the court service. Knew nothing about the job. I actually went to court one day because, again, people can go to court and observe. In a criminal court, anybody can attend a criminal court and observe. So I went into the criminal court and observed a hearing, and I could see this person sitting with the magistrates in front, giving advice in open court. And I thought, I want that job. That's what a legal advisor does. They sit in court with magistrates. So I applied to be a legal advisor and I got the job. So I started off as a trainee legal advisor, and I've been working for as a legal advisor ever since. And I love the job, and I'll explain what the job entails. As a legal advisor, you sit with magistrates. Magistrates are members of the public who volunteer to sit in court to decide on matters. Now, because I'm not legally qualified, they have to sit with a legally qualified person, a solicitor or a barrister, who can advise them in open court about the law. We are their legal advisor. We sit in court every single day. We give them advice. We give them, and we also, our job as well is to control the court hearing. We decide what happens in court. We control, people who are quite animated in court. Our job is to control that behaviour, tell people to leave the court. As well as that, we also sit on that. We're also given judicial powers, which means we can sit on our own, and sometimes we have hearings where we sit like a judge on our own, and we deal with certain cases on our own. Now, for me, the benefit of working for HMCTS is that we work for it's a civil service job. We've got really good benefits, we've got good pension, and it's a job where there's different careers. As a legal advisor, I've now been promoted, and now I'm a senior legal advisor. So I manage a team of 45 legal advisors for the whole of the Northwest region. We have 12,000 magistrates. In the whole nationally, we have 12,000 magistrates. I think in the Northwest, we probably have about 700 magistrates in the Northwest, and we have about 40, about 50 legal advisors altogether. My job is to manage those legal advisors. Now, you might be wondering, how do I get my MBE? How do I get from a child who from the Windrush generation to an MBE? Well, I was very fortunate working for HMCTS. I've been given various opportunities. I've done a lot of projects working with disadvantaged students in terms of the criminal justice system. I've been involved in going out to schools, talking about my role, and because of all that work I've done in the community, I've been recognised for that work. And last year, I was very fortunate to go to Windsor Castle, and at the time it was Prince Charles, now King Charles, presented me with my MBE for the work that I've done as a legal advisor. So I think the message at the moment, I think the message for you is that if you've got that drive and determination to succeed in whatever profession you want to do, whether it's law or whatever, don't be put off by people saying because you don't look a certain way, or you're not from a good university, or don't be put off. If you want that career, go for it. I'm now involved in the recruitment of legal advisors because we now offer, as a legal advisor, we offer training contracts. So that means that if you are a solicitor or a barrister and you're looking for a sort of pupillage or a training contract to be qualified, you can get that through HMCTS. I'm involved in the recruitment of training legal advisors, and what we're looking at, we're not looking at when we're looking at people's CV, we're not looking at people's CV in terms of what university they've gone to, what grades they've got. The criteria to apply to be a training legal advisor is you have a law degree from any university. It doesn't matter what your grade is, your GCSE grade, it doesn't matter what GCSE grades are. all you've got to have is that legal understanding to get the job. When you're interviewed, we don't ask you legal questions at the interview. What we ask you questions about your life skills. What we're looking for is your people skills, your communication skills, your problem solving skills. And the questions that we ask you about is, what have you done in your life? So when you worked in McDonald's, how did you deal with a problem? When you worked in a shop, how did you do? So we're looking about the skills that you've attained during your work experience or during your student jobs. Those are the skills that we're looking at. So I think the message I would say to all of you is that if you want a career in law, yes, the foundations are you have to have a law degree, but secondly, more importantly now, is your life skills, that you have the life skills to demonstrate in an interview that you can communicate with people, you are good at solving problems, and that you want to make a difference. Because I think Judge Guirguis and I, what we love about this job is that you get this job satisfaction, that you are helping people and you are giving some difficult messages to people they may not like, but you're enforcing the law, and that's what it's about, and making sure that people are aware that you are there to help and to protect people. I work in the family jurisdiction, so we're talking about protecting children and making sure that the children are safe in what they do. Okay, that's it from me.
Thank you very much, both. We've got some questions to ask. It's really interesting, and I think what the key message about, don't be put off if someone says that job's not for you. You don't, people like that, people who look like you don't do those roles. I think we have to break that barrier and say, this is what I deserve to be where I want to be, and having those wider skills as well is so key in many roles. Communication skills, people skills are key in so many jobs. What do you find is the biggest challenge in the role that you do? Tracey, I'll ask you first, as you're on my screen.
Yeah. I think the biggest challenge in the role, I sometimes think, is because on the family jurisdiction you're dealing with some very difficult decisions, and it's dealing with those difficult decisions because some of the decisions we have to make is very difficult about children, and hearing about some of the suffering that children go through, it can be difficult. So I think that is the challenge, is your well-being sometimes, is managing the difficult decisions you've got to make. And it can be heartbreaking, the decisions you have to make. Or if you're in the crime jurisdiction, you could be possibly, because I have done crime, I forgot to mention, when I was a legal advisor, I start off in the crime jurisdiction and I've gone over to the family jurisdiction. So as a legal advisor, you can do both roles. In a crime jurisdiction, I think is difficult. We have to send people to prison, and that's a difficult decision to make because you're advising an open court to send someone to prison. So I think it's those decisions that it's challenging for you as an individual, having to make those decisions.
And Judge Sharon, what have you found most challenging? Oh, Sharon, you're on mute.
Sorry, someone had to do that at some stage, and it was me. I decide on children cases, and one of the most difficult things is often you will find yourself having enormous sympathy for the parents. Parents have often gone through an awful lot, and you have to make sure your focus is on the needs of a child over and above the parent. So you may want to give a parent something, but know that that isn't the best thing for a child. And that's actually that conflict of people's interests, particularly when you've got enormous sympathy for someone, can be very difficult, but you've got to make sure you are applying the law properly. If you ever learn about law, it's Children Act 1989, welfare of a child is of paramount importance. And that's the thing I've always got to remember, however sympathetic I am to the parents. And it's not letting personal sympathies override applying the law properly.
Thank you for that. Yeah, I can imagine that's hard. What part of your job brings you joy, though? I'll start with you, Sharon.
I love it when a case gets sorted. There's a type of case in financial remedy called, there's a stage in proceedings in dividing money upon divorce called a financial dispute resolution hearing. And parties come into court and you try and steer the negotiations so that parties can reach an agreement. When parties reach an agreement at a financial dispute resolution hearing, it's ace, because they come into court at the beginning of the day looking absolutely terrified. they negotiate, reach an agreement, come back in, they're smiling and relieved, and it's just lovely. It's the best way of seeing that you've done your job. So those are the most enormously satisfying.
I suppose it could be quite intimidating for people to come into court, because most normal people wouldn't go into a courtroom. How do you manage that?
Sorry, I'm pointing in my room because there's a door to my left. When people look in, the look on people's face, smile. It's as simple as smiling and saying hello. Explaining what you're going to be doing takes away the fear. Well, doesn't take it away, but reduces the fear. The most difficult ones, though, where it's there's allegations of domestic abuse, and trying to reassure somebody who's a victim of abuse that they're safe in a courtroom is difficult. But all you can do, smile, hello, being human, I think are the most important things.
Thank you for that. I appreciate that.
I think Tracey would probably.
I completely. Can I just
go
say?
On, Tracey.
To me, the most. I think, as I said, I think the most satisfaction cases for me are the adoption cases. I think for me is when we're dealing with somebody who's applied to be adopted. And again, it could be a baby, and the parents come in, and whatever reason they've tried to adopt this child, and the joy, because that's one hearing where in most family hearings, unfortunately, the public can't come into the hearing. The only parties that can come into court are the parents or the parties. Adoption hearings, the only hearing where everybody can come into court in terms of the whole family, or the family members can. It's a celebration hearing. We invite them to come into court. Again, photographs, you can't take photographs in a courtroom, but they can. We bring the child comes into court with the adopted parents, and it's a celebration. We give them gifts. We give the child gifts out of, and they take, their whole family comes in and take pictures. It's the most joyous occasion for me. In terms of, as I mentioned before, the other question was about dealing with, again, I think when you're dealing, it's difficult. Most people haven't been in court before. They think, they see it on TV, but actually coming to court for the first time, we know they've got knots in their stomach. We know that they're nervous, they're apprehensive. So again, I agree with the judge. It's a case of it's putting them at ease, talking to them as human beings, as ordinary people, putting them at ease, saying we understand your concern. So to help you, we can offer you, special measures. That might be screens in court, or we can take breaks for you. We can offer you some water. It's putting them at ease, and giving them some safety net, especially if they are allegedly a victim of domestic abuse. We can offer them separate waiting rooms, separate sitting area, screens in court, talking to them, and again, and give them breaks during the hearing. Say, do you want a toilet break? We can give you as many breaks as you want. And I think if we do that, then people again will feel as if they've had chance to present their evidence in a way that we can understand what they're trying to say, and then they don't clam up, or so yeah.
Thank you, Tracey. I'll stick with you. This will be our last question, because I know the judge has got a hearing at 10 to prepare for. How long does a law conversion degree take?
The law conversion degree takes, my understanding, if it's still the same, is 12 months.
12 months. Oh, Sharon?
You can do it part-time as well. So I think if you do it part-time, I think it's 2 years if it's part-time.
Yeah.
Part-time, doing those sorts of things part-time is really helpful, because these courses cost money. It means you can work at the same time, which isn't great, because it makes it a very heavy workload. But in terms of financing it, it does make it a tiny bit easier.
And in some respects, if you think about it, if you do it part-time, as I mentioned before, when you get to the point you're applying for your, you're applying for your pupillage, your training contract, as Judge and I mentioned, it's all about your life skills. If you've worked through that, you've got the evidence then to say at your interview, yes, I've been working in a shop. Yes, I've been doing that. This is how I've applied these skills. So it's all about gathering your evidence, so when you have that interview for that job that you want, you can demonstrate because you've had all that work experience.
Thank you. So I do also think that's really important, that the skills that you might not think are naturally law skills, but everything you do, like Sharon, when you said about being a young carer at home, managing workload of an education and that role, working in the shop, dealing with people, a newspaper round, even getting up early in the morning, that's a skill.
Yeah.
But yeah, so thank you both very much. And thank you everyone who's joined us today. I hope you found the session useful. You can keep up with all things GMAX. This is part of Meet Your Future and GMAX on the GMAX website. It's written on the screen, and there's also a link that I've popped into the chat for you. GMAX is your Greater Manchester Apprenticeship and Career Service platform, where you can find out lots about careers, apprenticeships. There's some blogs on there as well about our paths and opportunities open to you. Many of you will be already using it, but do speak to your teachers if you want to find out more. There is a QR code on the screen for feedback. If you are able to use your phones and your teacher has agreed, please scan that and give us feedback. It is really useful for us to know what you've enjoyed about these sessions to help us plan future sessions. So if you do let your teachers know, and they can feedback to us. Thank you again for joining us. These sessions are recorded and will be available to you in weeks to come. And hopefully you now found out more about a career in law, and one day we'll be seeing you in court for all the right reasons. Thank you.